So, what if the next global economic crisis doesn't look anything like we expect? Yanis Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister, has this really stark warning. He's saying that the new war in Iran isn't just another geopolitical headline. It's the first domino in a chain reaction that could seriously damage the Western economy.
Yeah, Varoufakis does not pull any punches here. He sees this whole conflict as a colossal mistake, one he actually believes former President Trump was basically tricked into, and one that's going to have these severe, long-lasting economic consequences for all of us.
You know, Varoufakis argues this wasn't really a strategic decision, but more like a political trap. He points out that up until this point, Trump's economic strategy, the tariff war with China, leaning on America's big tech companies, it was arguably working out for him. But this war, this is a completely different beast. It's something he's been sucked into, and it just throws the entire economic rulebook out the window.
So the big question is, just how bad could the fallout be? Well, if you're reading the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times, you might be getting this sense of déjà vu. See, the conventional wisdom right now is to compare this situation to a recent scare we all had, the tariff war from last year. But is that really the right comparison to make? It seems like Wall Street's general attitude is, hey, we've seen this movie before, we know how it ends, right? Remember when the tariffs were announced? The markets had a little panic attack for a minute, but then, within a few months, the economy just bounced right back. It was surprisingly resilient, so the optimistic bet is that we're just going to see a repeat of that.
And this, right here, is the absolute core of what Varoufakis is trying to tell us. He is arguing that comparing this crisis to the last one isn't just wrong, it's a dangerous mistake. Because the very economic foundations we're all standing on today are fundamentally different than they were just a year ago.
Okay, so to really get a handle on the danger we're in now, we have to rewind the clock. We need to look at exactly why the economy recovered so fast from that tariff war. Varoufakis says it wasn't some miracle. It was a very specific system of 4 economic pillars that acted like a giant shock absorber.
So what were these 4 pillars holding everything together? Well, first, consumer demand was elastic. Basically, when tariffs hit, it was the importers who absorbed most of the cost, which shielded American families. Second, the tech sector was just on fire. There was this massive investment spree in AI that was lifting the entire market. Third, the tariffs had this kind of unexpected side effect. They actually pushed foreign companies to invest in the US. And finally, you had the ultimate backstop. Central banks were cutting interest rates, pumping cheap money into the system to keep it all growing.
So that was the economic picture last year. A pretty resilient system, supported by 4 really strong pillars. But here's the heart of Varoufakis' warning. Every single one of those pillars has now crumbled, they're gone. Let's break down exactly how, piece by piece. Okay, let's start with pillar number 1, the consumer. Last year's tariffs were on things like, say, electronics or furniture, stuff you might put off buying if the price goes up a bit. That's what we call elastic demand. But gasoline, that is a whole different ballgame. For most people, you have to drive to work. It's not optional. That's inelastic demand. So when gas prices shoot up, that cost doesn't get absorbed by some big corporation. It comes directly out of your family's budget.
And to make this really concrete, Varoufakis points to a key group of people, voters who have to commute, on average, 100 miles every single day, often in an older, not so fuel-efficient vehicle, a thirsty SUV. For them, a sudden jump in gas prices isn't just some minor annoyance. It is a direct, painful, and very significant hit to their income.
Now, let's look at the tech sector, last year's big hero. That AI investment boom was a huge engine for growth. But here's the catch. AI is incredibly power-hungry. It means a ton of energy. So what was once a symbol of economic strength is now directly vulnerable to the price of oil. As energy costs soar, all that massive investment in AI starts to look a lot less profitable, and a key driver of the market just kind of peters out.
Pillar number 3 was foreign investment. From Trump's perspective, the tariffs worked because they forced companies to build factories and create jobs right here in the US. But the economic winds have totally changed. That flow of capital, it's dried up. And in its place, we're starting to see a really worrying trend. Unemployment is beginning to tick up, and not just in the US, but across the UK and Europe too. That signals a much broader, more systemic weakness.
And this brings us to the final and maybe the most critical pillar that's been kicked out from under us. This safety net is gone. Last year, if things got shaky, central banks had a simple tool: cut interest rates to make money cheaper and boost the economy. But now, their hands are tied. Bond yields are rising, which means the market is getting nervous, so they can't cut rates to stimulate growth. In fact, they might be forced to raise them to fight inflation. And that would be like slamming on the brakes when the economy is already starting to slow down.
So what happens when a new economic storm hits, but this time, the 4 pillars that held up the roof have been completely kicked out? Well, according to Varoufakis, you don't just get a small leak, you get a total collapse.
And this is his really grim conclusion. He's not just talking about a slowdown or a regular recession. With consumers getting squeezed, investment drying up, unemployment on the rise, and the central banks pretty much powerless, he argues the Western economies are heading into a self-reinforcing downward spiral, a vortex of pain.
And so we're left with this deeply unsettling thought. What Varoufakis is laying out here isn't just a prediction. It's a warning that the economic playbook we've all been trusting for decades is now basically obsolete. And if the old solutions are now part of the problem, what in the world does the future of the global economy even look like?